Welcome back. Or if this is the first time that you've been here, welcome. We are reviving this channel and we're going to be talking all things toxic parents, dysfunctional family environments, and how to heal from all of them. So if you haven't yet subscribed and done all of that jazz, make sure you've done it and switch on all of that shit so that you make sure you see me pretty regularly. So I looked today and it was 4 years ago in March 2020 that I made a video entitled, "Should You Cut Ties with Your Alcoholic Parent?" For anybody that knows my work will know that in the 4 years since then, my work has drastically changed. I've released a book called It's Them, Not You, How to Break Free from Toxic Parents and Reclaim Your Story. And I have some strong and clear views on this now, having supported many, many people through very difficult situations, particularly with toxic and abusive parents. Back then, I was tentatively wrestling with the idea that maybe in some cases, your only choice was to cut free from an alcoholic parent. Now, the greatest analogy that I've ever heard and that I continue to use today, because it is different for everybody, but the greatest analogy that I can use, or metaphor maybe, metaphor, analogy, who knows? You know what I'm talking about, is how close can you sit to the fire without getting burned? And the reality is that for everybody, that's going to be slightly different. But it's important to validate and understand that some people sit right at the top end of what is a sliding scale with highly abusive, highly toxic parents who give them nothing, not even a iota of a speck of dust to attach to in order to be able to have a relationship. And in some cases, many more cases than we care to believe, the only option for them people is to cut ties and break free for the sake of their own well-being, and in many cases, their own now family. What's true, I think, for a lot of people is they go on to have their own children, and we'll do a separate video on what that's like, but they go on to have their own children, and then the realization comes in of just how bad the abuse and toxicity is that they've experienced all of their life. Now, in my book, I do talk, there's a chapter called Healing My Relationships. And look, I do think that there is sometimes we can possess the ability to be able to adjust our expectations and have a relationship with a parent. If, for example, you may have somewhere on that continuum a parent who is simply just emotionally immature or emotionally unavailable to you. So they're unable to show up to you emotionally in the way that you feel like you need them to be. Now, it may not be that you have to cut ties in this instant, but you may have to do some work around what can you expect from that relationship? How can you show up to that relationship different in order for you to be able to have it? The one thing that's true in all relationships with anybody, not just parental relationships, is you cannot change somebody else. You have no power to change anybody else. We can argue till the cows come home whether some people will change. We know that many people go to their grave being toxic and horrible. That's just a fact and a reality. But one thing is clear and that we can say as a fact, and that is that you have no power to adequately change somebody else. Now, your actions may change somebody or may play a role in changing somebody else, but you have no power over whether that's going to happen. And so in the end, you have to put yourself first and you have to say to yourself, if I'm going to have a relationship with this person, I have to see them for exactly what they are, look at exactly who they are and how they show up, and then find a way to have a relationship with them. And so if they're emotionally unavailable, you're going to need to be able to have a relationship with them where they don't show up to your emotions. And I think it's really important to understand that you can't spend your whole life self-abandoning, self-organizing, twisting yourself up and trying to change who you are in the hope that it will one day change somebody else. That's true in all of your relationships, but it's very true in your parental relationship as well. But I just want to hold space for the fact that if this person gives you nothing, they're highly abusive. Whenever you're in their company, they do nothing but make you feel worse about yourself. And we need to validate the fact that some parents are actively doing that. They are toxic and abusive in that way all of the time. If that's you, you may be left with no other choice but to break free from that toxicity, to go no contact. But breaking free from parents' toxicity doesn't necessarily always mean no contact. The important for me to summarize and say is that each and every single situation is different. But at the center of your decision making as an adult Has to be you and your family that you may or may not have built already now yourself, but the people around you, the people in your adult life, you and what you live for has to be central to that. And a loving parent will not place conditions on you, right? The love from a parent is probably the only unconditional love that we should experience, right? And so you should be able to make decisions as an adult and know that your parent will love you all of the same and support you in them. So if you are, and I am going to summarize here now properly, if you are in that situation where you're thinking, shouldn't I cut ties with a parent? The decision ultimately comes down to you, but at the center of that has to be you. And I really want to validate that in some cases that will mean drawing a line in the sand, breaking free and saying, I can't have a relationship with my abuser anymore. We wouldn't, sometimes we do push particularly women back to abusive relationships and we say for the sake of the kids. So it does happen in other instances, but never more so within the parental relationship. Society will tell you that you should love them no matter what, that you only get one mum and dad, you'll miss them when they're gone and all of that kind of stuff. That's normal circumstances with a normal messy parent who makes mistakes but tries their best. When you're talking about toxicity and abuse, everybody knows that toxic, horrible people exist. Many people don't want to admit that some of them are parents. And if you're left with no choice, then you're left with no choice and it's not your fault. We'll do more videos in the future about how to navigate once you may have cut contact, what that might look like, some of the traits of toxic parents. But I'm going to be posting here regularly now, this longer form content. And as I've said before, but I'm going to say it again, make sure that you've subscribed, turned on all the shit so you make sure that my videos show up pretty regularly. And I'll see you on the next one.